You're listening to Toronto's #1 real estate podcast, powered by Watson Estates. The most successful local real estate investing starts right here, right now. Here's your host, broker, investor, and social media influencer, Bradley Watson.
Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates. Thank you for joining us every single morning as we continue to dive into the latest news in our local market and come up with a game plan as investors on what we should be doing with our investments, whether we should be holding back, whether we should be diving in, all out, and to keep track with, in general, what is happening in the news around us as it relates to Toronto real estate. We are #1 on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts for that very subject. And today we have some wonderful content. We're going to start off talking about this kind of perception out there from realtors. Do they expect to see Toronto real estate decline? And if so, when? And I want to hear, there's articles that are kind of other agents talk about what they're saying. And as a broker myself, I'd love to hear what is the general feel out there. This is kind of as we're thinking about what's going to happen in the market, there's this soft side to it, right? We've got the hard data, we've got the stats, which paint one picture, but unfortunately they're based on past performance. And then we're kind of looking at where we're going to go from here, which yes, we can forecast, but as you've seen, forecasting doesn't work in itself as well. So there's this feel that needs to happen, a soft side to the analysis that I want to look at. And then will we see rent rates declining, and this declining we're seeing continue to happen, or will it stop anytime soon? Are we at a point now where rent rates can finally take a breather and stop worrying about up to 5% drops per month? Are we there yet? Have we hit a plateau? And then how much will your local taxes rise? I'm starting to get a little bit more info as it relates to local municipalities coming up with plans in their budgets. And I think this gives us an indication of how strong they are despite all the cries for needing more money early in the year. Maybe they're not so bad after all. So we're going to jump into this in just a second, but I was just sitting back yesterday and thinking, I had actually weighed myself a couple days ago. I don't know about you guys, but I've even heard a lot of ads for like people advertising weight loss products or gyms or whatever. Now maybe they're just targeting me because it's kind of an interest. I mean, I'm a bit of a gym goer as I was growing up, love lifting weights, but obviously I'm eating more because we're home and we're not going to the gym. But somehow along the way, I've lost 15 pounds during COVID. Is that just me? I maybe, and the reason is, in my opinion, because I'm not eating fast foods. Obviously, it's a life that's on the go, and so you stop and you nibble, you have those coffees and a bagel or cheeseburgers or chicken, fried chicken. I don't eat fried chicken. That would do it though. So I was thinking maybe COVID-19, the 19 in COVID-19 is they want the average Canadian or average person across the world to lose 19 pounds. I think it's some kind of government conspiracy, but I want a damn cheeseburger. Come up with a vaccine. Fun's over. All right, let's get into some fun here talking about the local market. There was a number one article of the day, comes from nowtoronto.com. I actually received a message from a friend of mine who he's overseas, kind of tracking our market on an ongoing basis for himself for investing. And it was an article that lined up exactly with the same conversation that's happening here, which is what led me to this conversation. So the article reads, Toronto's real estate decline is still to come, according to CMHC. So you guys know, because if you've been tracking with us for even a week, you know CMHC, they recently pulled back on their initial plan of saying the world's going to fall apart, right? Like Canada is going to decline across the country. Nobody's safe, especially in the big markets, you're screwed. But then more recently, what do they call it here? Quote, special edition housing market outlook, which was published on June 23rd. They changed their tune, which was in follow-up of their spring 2020 report. So they obviously got enough flack because the reason for the upset was it was a general overall prediction. They said everybody is going down. This is a joint effort. And I've had some good points also saying that they're the only insurer that's made that move. And so maybe that gives some discredit to their predictions. But now they are saying that the average house price in Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa will recover sooner, and Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary slower, right? And they're saying that the declines are going to happen here they say until 2022, we won't see a full recovery. And so based on what CMHC has now said, their revision, which they still stand as one of the more negative outlooks on our marketplace. So based on this, what are local realtors saying? And I love the two that they picked because I think they're being very genuine. I think you can get caught up often as a realtor says it's always good, right? Always good, always good, always good. You can also sell a doom and gloom. It's always crashing. It's always crashing. And that's what you see more on the non-media. So the media tends to be all good, all good, all good. And then off the media, it's all bad, all bad, all bad. And those are the winners in each platform. So to find a middle ground is often difficult. But I think these guys did a pretty good job. So the two people that they interviewed, one was Odine Eccleston and Murray Mansour. So the first person, Eccleston, is from WE Realty. I find that the market is hot. So this is tracking past performance. Who says the lull caused by COVID-19 was shorter than expected, and she's now just as busy as she had been in previous summers. I would agree. In that statement, I'm pretty much in line with that. There was a month or two, it was pretty quiet. I actually qualified for the CERB for 2 months, and now I'm back to normal and business is flowing as it was in past years. Then they said this, it's still very much a seller's market in Toronto, Ajax, and Pickering. That's the area that Mansour, the second agent, works, who works with Remax Hallmark Realty. She adds that low interest rates and inventory is keeping demand in Toronto high. She goes on to say how the prices are actually above 2019 levels at 865 or 863, but these figures are lower what was expected in 2020. So here's where I think there's some confusion. So when we hear prices are coming down, that is in most cases a true statement, because when we compare it with March, prices are down. But if you were to say prices are going up, that is also a true statement as it relates to year over year. So again, you can't confuse month over month, year over year, because March was a peak. It was the apex of what we've seen so far historically. So to get back to March numbers, yes, that will take till 2022. Now, if you're saying we need to get back to where we were in 2019, we're already there. Now, so I love this comment because, again, it lines up with what we've been saying, and it's great. It's reinforcing. Look out for September and October when mortgage deferrals come due. Are you guys hearing a common rhythm, a mantra that's kind of forming? This is what, now they're not saying it's going to be bad, or they're not saying it's going to be good. I mean, I don't know why it'd be good, but they're not saying it's going to be catastrophic. They're just saying, watch out. And that's what I'm saying too, because we don't really know. We don't really know, which is also why to say the forecast is going to bounce back to 2022 is, we don't know that either. Because even though you're saying 2022, you don't know both. The further out your prediction, the more unlikely you are. And for me, the more likely I'm going to want to use historic information, which shows increases, right? So if you were to add, because to say we're going to have a problem in September and October is an easier statement than to say we're going to be recovered by 2022, because we don't know how bad it's going to get or how not bad it's going to get. Hopefully you guys are tracking with some of these thoughts. Mansour forecasts in line with CMHC, predicting the average home in Toronto potentially decline to 825 from that initial amount that we saw of 863 in the fall, before dipping somewhere between, listen to this, 739 and 840. So it's going to go somewhere between 740 and 840. In other words, it's going to drop somewhere between 120,000 or 20,000 in fall of 2021. So we're going to have some pretty boring market in the next year, according to CMHC and according to this agent, and potentially recovering up to 880 in the fall of 2020, which is up $20,000 from where it was in May. Currently, both realtors are seeing multiple offers. See, this is what's so funny. We're saying we're going to have a problem. We're going to see prices coming down, but we're getting multiple offers. We're getting unexpectedly high sale prices. People who have renovated properties or are spending additional money on the home in this real estate before they sell it have most optimal presentation and pricing. They go faster. They go super quick. The ones in nice areas, the ones that have good stuff, good product, good inventory, it goes very, very fast. I have we're listing a property actually this week in Caledon, Ontario. They're downsizing and they managed to get a deal actually conditioned on the sale of their home up north, moving up probably an hour, 45 minutes. So pretty good distance. So there's a little bit more fluctuation, but ability to get a deal, not fluctuation. There's less fluctuation. Meanwhile, selling in a hot neighborhood like the one they're in we're actually going to be doing a pre-inspection with hopes to drive no condition offers, right? So this is a prime candidate to have the home looked at in advance because there's a very real chance we're going to get condition-free offers. Ecclestone, this is one of the agents, reports that some realtors are using COVID-19 like a buzzword to drive purchase prices down. On the same morning we spoke, a realtor presented Ecclestone with a lowball offer on a listing, coupled with a warning that higher offers could fall apart come closing due to COVID-19 related pressures. What a tactic. I use this too. So here's the logic, right? So you say, okay, your home, let's say your home is 1.3, right? Your home you want 1.3. But the home, we don't know if it's going to be 1.3. It could be 1.25. So you don't want 1.3 because if it's 1.25, then they can't close. And if they don't close, you're going to have to relist the property and then sell it for less, and you're going to be in court. You don't want that. You want 1.25. When Ecclestone grilled further, the realtor admitted having never experienced that herself. What a cop-out. What a cop-out. I thought this was a perfect time to share a little story with you as it relates to appraisers. I've kind of hinted I've had problems with appraisers, but here's a perfect example. I have had this happen. Okay, I have had this happen. It is a legitimate case, and that's why I bring it up as an issue. To bring it up as an issue and not having it experienced as an issue is a little bit of weak hand. But if you have experienced it, it's not. Listen to this story. So I had a client who listed a property out in the burbs, and we listed and held on to that home. We were very confident of the price, and we waited to sell the thing. And I told them, like, if we sell this thing from the price that this lady gave us, like they offered us, it was actually $50,000 more than the value. Like, we were looking at the comparable. So we knew you just got an extra 50 grand on this property. And there was no way of making a case that it was worth what we got for it. Like, there was no way. I looked at the numbers. Yet we got a sucker. Oh, we got us a sucker. Like that good 2-year-old. We got a sucker. And they came in and submitted an offer. And then they didn't have time to do the appraisal. In fact, ironically, the appraisal happened within a few days of the financing condition being removed. Sucker! And the appraisal came back, and of course, as appraisers often do, there is room for a fluctuation, and they appraised 30,000 below. So in this case, it worked out for them because they actually gave them an extra 20 grand of added value. And often appraisers do that, by the way. When you're applying for a mortgage, you say, oh, it's worth this much. You didn't really think it was, but then it ends up coming out that much. Oh, coincidence? I think not. Because, you know, the unbiased appraisers of the world. Anyway, so this place, even with the stretching that you have to do at home because you're locked up with COVID, that's happening by the appraisers, left them at 30,000 below what they paid. So guess what happened? My phone rang. Yeah, Bradley, the property was appraised for 30,000 below what we paid. So we're going to have to do a price adjustment. Screw you. I told them good luck and I'll see you in court. Yeah, the property closed. They somehow fined the 30,000 the bank wasn't willing to finance. It happens, guys. It happens. Don't overpay for a property. So to say, oh, well, you could get over appraised, if the prices do go down, that could very well happen. And it has happened to me. And it happens all the time. So sometimes getting more than the value of your home is a risk if it's a conditional on financing. If there's no condition on financing, your problem. I'll see you in court. So both of these agents report an abundance of caution among buyers. According to Ecclestone, buyers aren't as eagerly diving into bidding wars just to get in the real estate market as they did 2017. I don't know. I would say there's less bids, but the bids are still pretty strong. They're saying some of the bids that they have multiple people with conditions, like financing conditions, because of the concern. But you know what? Doesn't matter because they're just pumping up the numbers and they lose anyways. Right? Like, listen to this. I'm seeing 2 or 3 out of 5 offers with conditions. That's different. People are a little more cautious. Well, guess who's winning the offer? The 2 that don't. So there you have it, guys. We got a hot market, but keep your eyes peeled. September, October, same dates that line up with Everything is going to come to fruition, whether there's going to be an additional extending of mortgage deferrals, which nobody's talking about. That maybe, I don't know. Maybe if they can pull the trigger for 6 months, could they not pull it for another 2 or 3? Maybe. And the CERB, of course, that's coming up too around the same time. Okay, let's move on for you investors out there wondering about rent. Why am I losing rent? When I relist my property, I'm really nervous because I could be losing $450 per month in rental income. What's going on, Brad? Save us! All right. BlogTO.com has an article called "The Average Rent for an Apartment in Toronto Continues to Fall." And what they've done is they've compiled some articles we've talked about, right? Rentals.ca. Who else they got here? They got, I think it was TorontoRentals.com. And they're looking at some of the stats. And what I find interesting is that we're trying to map out trends here. We're going to get numbers. We're going to hear the numbers. For example, according to June 2020, rent per square foot on Rentals.ca says it fell 3.5% in May 2020, right? So, but that, they say, so if we look at a percent drop of 0.5% in May, when you compare it to April, from April, we saw a price drop of 5.9% per month. So, guys, think of it like this. So 0.5%, oh, it's like you can just report 5.5%, oh, rent's coming down. But in light of what's happening, let's try and figure out what is the trend? What's the pattern? They were dropping at 6% per month, and now it's down to 0.5% in 1 month. To me, like this is where you got to read between the lines. And this is the difference between someone who's mapping things out versus someone who waits for the news to pop out. We have some news, we have some historics, but we also can see a pattern. Now, will that ramp up and continue to further go down? Maybe. But if we look at just the pattern, we see a plateau. We've just entered a very quick plateau. So it seems that they just shut off the switch. So what changed? Like, what happened between April and May that changed? Is it Airbnbs coming back on, where you're allowed to now do Airbnbs? Not legally, of course, but in the province of Ontario, right? Has that changed things? Have we maybe reached a maximum for low-income families that are being left unemployed, right? Maybe everybody has shrunk what they can. I'm going to move in with my friends. That move happened. Now, COVID, got Airbnb on the mind. COVID has made everybody rejig. And they did that in a matter of a couple months. Is everybody now rejigged? I don't know. Now, in the M5E area code, we saw drops, and we talked about this, of $450 per month from last year. That's a big jump. Now, TorontoRentals.com and Bullpen Research and Consulting notes the surge in supply can be attributed to an influx in short-term rentals, which is why Airbnb, I think, is the big player in all of this, by the way. Also, travel and immigration, right? These things have big impacts into a full-time market due to COVID travel bans, of course. So tourism. And I would say immigration too, because we know they stay for a few years before they purchase. Toronto Rentals said because demand for rental accommodations is expected to pick up as the slowdown ends, recent graduates start their careers, people cooped up with family or roommates look for their own place, and the border opens up to foreign students, temporary residents, contract workers, and immigrants. So these are some of the reasons that I think you're starting to see a leveling out. Not an increase in rent. I don't think you're going to see, even if we did see an increase, it'd be flat. You're not seeing much change in rent on the upside. But it's the same reason you're not seeing it going down any further. It's only a matter of time. Like, you can't keep bringing the price down, because at some level, this is how this works, guys. Rentals need to compete with purchasing, right? Like if I own a home, right? And yes, I'm willing to pay an extra $200, $300, $400 a month to own that property. But to some extent, when it's all of a sudden the price is less than half, I'm going to be like, well, what the heck? I guess I wouldn't rent my place out. In that case, I'd rent somewhere where there is cash flow, and I would move into a rental. Maybe there is a break point where people are like, you know what? I don't mind the risks of being a tenant, the risk of being kicked out or whatnot. I'll get myself a nice long fat lease, and I'll live nice and cozy, and I'll collect money somewhere else where I can get money. So that break will happen. So there needs to be a bottom. Have we reached it? For the short term, I think maybe. I do think maybe. The report also predicts another wave of more rental units hitting the market when Ontario lifts its eviction ban. So looking to the future, where we are now, I think things have kind of sorted themselves out. But what happens next? This is the issue, right? Do we have a spillover right? It's not just going to affect rentals. Are we going to also see a spillover into selling of properties? So people that maybe had, there's been I've heard up to 50,000 tenants across Ontario. And we've said that before. I don't know the local numbers, but it's going to be a lot. It's going to be possibly tens of thousands here in the GTA. So as these people start to say, okay, well, finally I kicked you out. Finally you left because I couldn't get you out. You weren't paying rent or whatever the reason. Get out of my house. And then some people are going to say, well, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to re-rent this thing. Now I'm going to be collecting 150 less. I'm just going to sell it. I want the money. And especially if they think there's a buying opportunity coming in the next year or so, I'm going to sell it, right? So you're going to get an influx as well on the purchasing side. Lots of movements happening, but it would absolutely pose an issue for rentals. It's going to pose a problem for landlords because they're going to have a bunch of nasty up tenants that you don't want walking and knocking on your door. You're also going to have, what do we got here? Tenants refusing to leave to sell their property now. And the LTB is closed, right? So things are closed. Can't do anything now. We'll do them later. So you're going to get an influx of tenants that you don't want anyways. It's going to get messy. It could get messy. But as it stands right now, things seem to be leveling out. In fact, we look at certain areas like the M5V code, which is downtown area, includes City Place, King West, Entertainment District. They actually saw an increase in the number of, they call it page views, months over months. So more people looking. The M5A area, which is south of College between Jarvis and the DVP, saw an increase of 29%. So some areas are seeing more interest on these websites. Again, enforcing the fact I think we found ourselves a plateau where we are today. It'll be so interesting to see when the evictions are allowed once again, what happens. Keep your finger on the pulse. Keep your subscription on Toronto's #1 real estate podcast as we hit that news. Can't wait. Let's go. Some other fun facts that I kind of saw as it relates to how it would affect our market out in the news, globally even. A couple of pieces that kind of caught my eye as I was looking at the news this morning. ThePieNews.com, this was from the UK. Universities consider charter flights for international students. In the UK, the University of Bolton has made plans to fly in students from India, China, and before the new semester starts in September. So you can see there's a need. We have a massive amount of students locally. Maybe we do the same. I don't know. With universities and colleges opening up, we will see. Now, we actually know Canada, even though we're like, oh, we're doing so good, there is a higher per capita mortality rate than a lot of these countries. It's very easy to compare yourself with the US. It's so easy to compare. I think it's it's like comfort food. The comfort food, obviously, I'm not eating. All right. Also, why CMHC's upcoming mortgage application changes will have little effect. We did this a couple days back. Now, we were tracking BC. Because you know me, I don't like sitting and waiting for the local news. If I can get a tip somewhere else, I'm a jump for it. But finally now we're starting to see an article that came out of Toronto Stories talking about how Toronto won't see much of an impact due to the new changes of CMHC, which we already kind of knew. We knew that, but it's nice and encouraging to see that news hitting us locally as well. But I want to get into this topic of municipal taxes. Municipalities. Remember those guys? The Federation of Municipalities that were all freaking out in Toronto. We're going to need to cut services, double-digit municipal tax increases. Save us! What happened to that? What happened? Radio silence. Here's a little history lesson as it goes. This article highlights, it's actually in saga.com. It's talking specific to Mississauga, which is a great place to look at what will happen here in Toronto because they were number 2 on the list. Toronto had the biggest risks, right? The biggest property tax increases coming. Mississauga was right next in line. They were expecting a 17% property tax increase if they got no financial support. Well, you guys know in June 1st, just a few weeks back, the federal government fast-tracked $2.2 billion to help municipalities. So they were essentially allowing people to take money out quicker. And Mayor said they need much more, this was the article back then, to avoid mass layoffs, property tax hikes, and service cuts. We need more. That's not enough. And when we look at it from a perspective of percentage, it was not a lot. Like it was very minor. I can't remember the numbers now. We can go back and listen to the podcast when it happened, but it's not significant at all based on what was the requirement or what they said would be the issues faced by municipalities. Well, that's fine and good, and that's where we left off until this article comes out, which has me scratching my head. Here it is. At the recent budget committee meeting held to introduce the preliminary 2020 to 2023 business plan and 2020 budget, The city of Mississauga said that more transit service, enhanced public safety, enhanced road safety, and quality of life preservation would remain priorities for the city. And of course, they managed to get some money in for all of those things somehow. But how much more will residents have to pay going forward? Well, okay, hedge your bets. Let's take a second to think about it. 17%, let's say the government bailed you out on the high end, 15 to 20% of what you said you needed, or else you're going to get screwed, okay? What kind of property tax are we expecting in Mississauga? Well, there's a reason this isn't huge news. They're saying an overall property tax increase of 3.04%. And businesses are going to see a 1.85%. Boring. Where's my 10% increase? You build this thing up. I thought we were going to see like an explosion, an explosion where you're kind of walking away nice and like cool. It's like Mayor Crombie just kind of like walking and there's just like a blow up with just like Mississauga in the back. No, not really. 3%. What happened? That's what I want to know. Now, of course, there's no explanation. It's just like, oh, okay, so we're just going to ignore the fact that like a month or two ago, we said we're going to see almost 20% increase in property taxes. And with a minor assistance humming for your city, all of a sudden, oh, no, we're good. We're good. The federal government they're accelerating the money for them. Apparently that was enough. I think they overscreamed. I think they yelled louder than they needed to, maybe. I don't know. The city's operating budget includes revenues for 2020 with the cost for ongoing programs and services like public transit, parks, roads, building maintenance, snow clearing, recreation program. I mean, it's great when you're like, oh yeah, we're going to make cuts. We're going to streamline things. We're going to do stuff like that. Okay, great. Like, I'm sitting back here now wondering, okay, Doug Ford was putting pressure on municipalities to really tighten their belts. Well, the pressure is definitely on them now, and somehow they did it. Like, for example, they had their operating budget. They said that the numbers show an increase of 4.9%. That was kind of the number. So even if we were to cover that, it's still 5%. And that's to cover inflation and new services. So that's just like union contracts and inflation and like new services that are small but needed. That's kind of how they've positioned it. Still scratching my head. I don't know. According to the city manager of Mississauga, we continue to identify opportunities within the budget to further reduce the proposed tax rate. Staff consistently look for ways to streamline how we do business and keep Mississauga fiscally responsible. Our commitment is to continue to work with council to provide value for tax dollars through cost savings and efficiencies. Well, thank you, COVID. Making you lose some weight. I'm not the only one losing weight. Apparently the cities are too. Thank you. Finally, efficiencies are coming to our city. I find this absolutely incredible. Politics at its finest. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Toronto. Is it going to be much of the same? I suspect yes. We're going to see the transparency and the honesty of how tight were you actually coming out. That's the story. That's the untold story that's happening in all of this. Something is up. Either they've made it work or the municipalities are far more resourceful than we initially said. Let's see what happens. Maybe municipalities have mysteriously lost weight while they're staying home as well. I don't know. In the meantime, I'm going to dream about cheeseburgers. I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my day. I got some crazy stuff going on in our career here right now. We are busy, guys. So busy. Time will tell. I hope it keeps going because I'm not so worried about the price of the homes. I'm more worried about the activity. Activity's picking up whether you like it or not. We are busy. We're having a great career. We're having a great time. I love what I'm doing. Do you love what you're doing? COVID's a great time to start thinking about your career as well. Is it something you want to be doing? I hope you guys have a wonderful day with your loved ones and or your boss. I'll see you next time. Take care and keep it real.